Hello, this is Crystal Nahr with the Chillicothe Area Chamber of Commerce, and we welcome you to the first of a few video series covering different important topics that are relevant to the Chillicothe and Livingston County community. This first one will be covering all of the election information coming up in the April 7th election here right in our own backyard. So you're going to hear from a few different individuals today sharing information with you about either important election topics or general election information. So we hope that you gather some insight and input from these important topics and share with those around you as well, so everyone can become a more informed voter. In the meantime, we'd be remiss if we didn't discuss a little bit of the middle of this pandemic that we are finding ourselves in. Please know that the Chillicothe Chamber is here for you and all of our fellow businesses and community members as we wade through these uncharted waters together. Please know there is some great information available on our website, which is www.chillicothemo.com. Look under the In the News tab and you will find a lot of links and great relevant information there pertaining to the COVID-19 virus. Also, we have a great resource in our public health department, so make sure you are using them if you are feeling ill or if you have any questions about how to handle the situations that are before us. Now on with the show. Welcome everyone, thank you for joining us. So I'm very excited to have Miss Sherry Parks with us today. She is the Livingston County Clerk and also known as the Election Authority. So who better to have us talk about all of the upcoming things with the election to take place in April than Miss Sherry Parks.
Good morning.
Good morning. So to begin, I just asked Sherry to share with you the information about the upcoming election and what it means for Livingston County.
Well, it is scheduled for April 7th. The polls are open 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. It's everybody that's registered to vote currently is able to vote.
Excellent. And so then I know that there are several big important issues on the ballot, which is why we're even recording today, so that all this information can get out to the general public. So I know there are several items on this ballot. So do you mind sharing those with us?
No, I will share those. Livingston R-II School, Chillicothe, Chula School, Hale School, Trenton School, Breckenridge School, City of Chillicothe sales tax question, City of Chula, and Village of Utica.
So there are a lot of ones that are very defined about specific areas.
Yes.
So is there anybody that is not affected by that?
Yes, there is about 10% of the registered voters who are not going to have an issue to vote on this time.
Okay. And then all of our polling places are accounted for. Everybody should know that information well in advance. It is on your voter card, correct?
Yes, it is. However, this time, because of the limited issues, I am combining a couple of small ones and I will send a mailing to those people
Wonderful.
that is affected by that.
Okay, so you will hear it straight from the county clerk's office if you are affected by any of those changes. Now, I do know, given our current situation that we're finding ourselves in, hence why we're recording this and not meeting in person in large groups, that absentee voting, I'm sure, is going to see an increase, I would assume. So why don't you share some information about absentee voting and how people can participate that way?
Okay, so there are a few different options. You can walk into the office to vote.
Okay.
And you can do that up until April 6th at 5 p.m., the day before the election.
Up until the day before election, go to the county courthouse, right in the middle of Chillicothe. And do they need to come to your office?
Yes.
On the second floor. And all the way through what time of day does that stop?
5 p.m.
5 p.m. on April 6th.
And they need to have their identification.
Okay, and that can be?
A driver's license, voter registration card, pretty simple.
Okay, excellent. So make it super easy for you to be able to perform your civic duty. Now, we do know that there is some uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty right now all around, not just Livingston County and Chillicothe, but pretty much across the nation. And that could possibly affect the election, which is scheduled right now to take place on April 7th. Is that correct?
Yes. Now, I will say you can also vote absentee by mail.
Great.
Request it by March 26th. That is the deadline to do that. And we can mail a ballot out. We do have to have a signed application. So given the situation we are in, people who are prone to illness or currently not feeling well would fall in a category that could do that from home, and we could mail a ballot to them. We could also mail ballots to college kids or people who are Livingston County residents who happen to be gone for whatever reason.
Okay.
All of that being said, with the current state of the country and the whole world, really, I have been in many conversations and communication for several days with election authorities throughout the whole state. We all have a lot of concern. We still have 3 weeks before the election is here.
And we know things are changing day by day.
It is changing day by day. The illness is spreading. I think it will look completely different 3 weeks from now.
Right.
So we have a lot of concern. We've actually discussed moving it, but at this point, it has not been moved.
So this is being recorded on Tuesday, actually St. Patrick's Day. So just know that as of right now, the time of this recording, everything is as is. But if something should change, we know we can depend on our local election authority to keep us abreast of any changes that might come down the pike.
If the minute I hear, I will notify the local media, put it on our website, do everything I can to get word out. I will say we are looking at changing it to possibly June if that does happen. So it wouldn't just be moved a few weeks, it would be a few months.
Yeah.
So that hopefully
allowing clearance.
Yes.
Okay.
However, there's not a state statute that allows for that. It takes a special court order, and we have not attained that yet.
So at this time, plan on April 7th being the date unless you hear otherwise. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining us again. I am here now with Mr. Dan Wiebers of the Chillicothe R-II School District. And as we are covering all the important topics that will be on the upcoming ballot, of course, the Invest in Your Future, the school tax levy, is a very important one that's on the ballot. And we want to do our part in making sure that you, the public, have all the accurate information as it pertains to that issue. So thank you for being with us.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
No problem. We are going to jump right in. And so the first thing is for you just to basically explain to us what exactly is being proposed.
The Chillicothe R-II Board of Education is requesting from the patrons that we add 68 cents per $100 assessed valuation to the Fund 1 or Operational Fund. In addition, the district currently collects 12 cents per $100 assessed valuation in the Capital Projects Fund, but that expires or that sunsets in 2023. So what will happen in 2023 is those additional 12 cents will then transfer over to the Fund 1. But net will be 68 cents additional in the operating levy.
Wonderful. And so then with that 68 cents, I believe I've heard tell, when was the last time that anything was voted in?
Yeah, the last time the voters of the Chillicothe R-II School District approved an increase to the Fund 1 operating budget was 1992. So it's been
a few
28 years since the last time an addition was made to that balance.
Okay. And so on the flip side of this, I know you guys have been very mindful of putting all the numbers together and seeing where you could kind of meet the public as far as the needs of the school district. So why don't we talk a little bit about the needs and what this money could actually do for the school district?
Absolutely. We'll generate those funds into Fund 1, which allows us to then have a little flexibility. We can move those funds into Fund 2, which is for the teacher salaries and benefits, or Fund 3 for debt service, or Fund 4 for capital projects. So what we'd be able to do is if we had the need in our district, which we do, we could transfer it to the correct fund then to use for those expenditures. But mainly we're looking for recruiting and retaining the certified and non-certified staff we have in our school district. We have a wonderful staff in our school district that take great care of our students and our children, but it's important that we compensate them for the job they do. So we'll be looking to work with them and their salaries to make sure they're competitive with neighboring school districts so we can have the best for ours.
I know one of the things that I learned that was eye-opening for me was that we are very fortunate to have our education staff kind of all throughout the Chillicothe R-II School District that actually are way above the state standards when it comes to level of education, but yet our pay falls underneath the state level of what is the median, I guess you could say.
Yes, yeah, the state does put together a report card every year that shows what each district is doing across the state as far as multiple areas. And one of those areas is teacher salaries and teacher education level and teacher experience. And what we found through our research was the Chillicothe R-II School District has teachers who have been in education longer.
Yes.
We have additional advanced degrees compared to the average teacher in the state of Missouri, yet our salary is below the state average for teachers. So it was something we definitely would like to address with these additional funds.
Okay. And then are there other things in addition to salaries? I know you said some debt consolidation or management, I guess would be the correct term. And then also capital improvements. So does that mean that that can also be used to, I know, can that be applied to buses? How does that all work?
Yep, that rule is, anything that's going to last longer than 3 years. So if we need to replace a bus or fix a wall in an elementary building or buy furniture and things like that, it comes from that Fund 4. So we'd be able to transfer those funds. If we did, let's say, have a bus breakdown, we could repair those buses and get them back on the road for our kids.
I know, and I count myself lucky that I'm not in Dan's position because it is a very big budget to have to oversee. But I know a lot of times it feels probably a little bit like a Rubik's Cube and that you're having to move things around very strategically to try to make everything come together just as it needs to.
Absolutely. And we have for the past couple of years been deficit spending in our school district, and that is something we definitely need to take care of because you can't keep spending from your reserves or your savings account and continue to do that forever.
Right.
So we're being a little proactive as a school district, trying to take care of that, plus meet the needs of our staff and the equipment that we have in our district and the buildings and buses and things like that, so we can provide the best for our students.
I know another thing the public might be interested in hearing is through all the research of figuring out the 68 cents, how that kind of falls in comparison to other districts around us or comparable size. So how does that turn out?
Actually, I compared several districts in our area, and as of right now, we are below what we're collecting per $100 assessed valuation of many districts our size in our area.
Okay.
Then I gave the presentation and people said, well, I live in neighboring school districts and I know we pay more, and they're smaller than Chillicothe, but we pay more per $100 assessed valuation. So I compared our operational fund to about 8 or 9 districts in our area, and their operational district is larger than the Chillicothe R-II school
Good to know.
And you can find that information if you go to the Invest in Our Future Facebook page. You can actually see the slides instead of me reading all the school districts. All of those things are there if you're interested in the statistics.
So Dan, why don't you tell us one more time where they can access that additional information?
There's a great Facebook page out there that you can go to, and it's called Invest in Our Future, the Chillicothe R-II levy. If you look for that, you can find out all this information, look at the statistics, and see presentations that have been provided concerning the levy issue. It's
wonderful. So April 7th, as it sits right now, will be the election. Absentee voting will take place up until the day before at the courthouse or mail-in by March 25th. So thank you, Dan, so much for being with us.
I appreciate it.
Sharing the information, and we wish you all the best in the upcoming election.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us once again. I am here with Dan Chappell, the City Administrator for the City of Chillicothe, as we're covering all of our important topics that will be on the upcoming April 7th ballot. One of them actually impacts the city pretty greatly. So we're so glad to have Darren with us today to share a little bit of information with us about that.
My pleasure.
So I guess we'll just jump right in and say the why. Why is it so important for this particular issue on the ballot that will impact our police and emergency department?
Yeah, this quarter-cent sales tax, general sales tax that we're putting on the ballot is going to be dedicated for law enforcement. And the reason why this is so needed is because the cost of law enforcement in the 21st century is just exponentially higher than it ever has been before. There's quite a bit of technology that's available that helps the police do their job. And for a city, public safety is just at the top of the list of requirements.
Paramount, yes.
Yeah, that we have to take care of. And so by being able to fund those activities fully, it allows our police department to do everything that they need to do. And although Chillicothe is a wonderful place to live and raise children and all of that, we're not immune to the criminal activities that other cities round about us are seeing. And in order for us to keep pace and try and keep those individuals off the streets who would do our community harm, we have a paramount responsibility to make sure that we're able to stay a couple steps ahead of them.
Okay. So, of course, the question that I'm sure most of our viewers are wondering is, what is the cost to them? What are they looking at whenever we talk about this particular increase?
Sure. So a quarter-cent sales tax, of course, translates to 1/4, just 25 cents for
Right.
every $100 that you spend.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not something that in and of itself is a tremendous increase of expense for anybody, even those on limited incomes and fixed incomes. I mean, it's a tax, and I don't like taxes. I may be the most anti-tax government person.
If you know Darren, you know this is true.
I don't like taxes, and I think that governments at all levels ought to be extraordinarily cautious about asking voters for more taxes. But this one is of a small nature, and because it's a sales tax rather than a property tax, roughly half of all of our sales tax revenues that the city of Chillicothe derives, we get that from people who don't live in the city.
Which is a very valid point. It's
Yeah.
people who are traveling here and using our facilities and our resources.
Exactly. So because we sit at the crux of two major highways, as we do, we get a lot of people who don't live here at all, but they shop here, they get fuel here. They stop and get a candy bar, and they help pay for our taxes at about half of what we collect. So what that means is for the average taxpayer here in Chillicothe, this gives them the biggest bang for their buck.
Okay.
Sales taxes do.
Our residents reap the reward.
Absolutely. So they're paying half the cost and reaping 100% of the reward.
Okay. So let's move on with that, and that for our residents, what would be the benefits to the community if this should pass?
Sure. So predominantly this is going to be used for equipment.
Technology, I know, is one of the things
Sure.
that you mentioned.
Police cars, though, is just a basic thing. Years ago, the city bought 8 police cars all at once, and that was a great thing, I suppose. But they all go bad at once, too. So this past summer, we had 8 police cars in service. 5 of them were in the shop all on the same day.
That's hard.
And it just makes it almost impossible for us to be able to function as a police department. So what this does is this will allow us to feather in new vehicles to our fleet every year, 2, maybe 3 every year. And those police cars are not extravagant by any stretch of the imagination, but because of the technology and the equipment that's required for a police vehicle, they're about $50,000 a piece.
And the wear and tear on a police vehicle, because it's not like ours that we drive to work, it parks, sits there all day, and then it drives us home at the end of the night. It is being used nonstop.
Sure, and even if we're not talking about the wear and tear like in a chase, which we don't have very many of those,
Thankfully.
and our rules of engagement don't allow for us to do high-speed pursuits in town, unless there's extreme circumstances. But you're still dealing with the fact that those cars are, if nothing else, they're sitting on the side of the road watching traffic, idling all day long. So 40,000 miles on a police car is not 40,000 miles on your or my vehicle.
Cruiser, like your
exactly.
family vehicle.
Exactly. So that's a big part of it. But so are bulletproof vests. So and training for our officers. It's extraordinarily important that our officers receive the very, very best training that they possibly can. Not just so that they can go home safe every day. We just had in Springfield just the other day.
Over the weekend,
had a terrible event where an officer was killed in the line of duty. And, hopefully, he did everything right, did all the training, and it was just bad timing. But we don't want to have something, God forbid, to happen to one of our officers, and then I, as city administrator, the chief, as the head of the department, have to stop and ask ourselves, well, what could we have done differently? So training is a big part of it, but not just for the police, but for our citizens as well. We want to make sure that 21st century model of law enforcement is what's adopted by our officers, so that our citizens are protected to the very best of our ability without infringing upon their liberties, civil rights, civil liberties. We want to make sure that We uphold the Constitution at every turn. But people ought to be able to live, walk down the streets, interact with businesses, and know that they are safe.
Yes.
To the very best of our ability. And all of that is under the heading of what these funds would be used for.
Okay. And now remind us, because I'm not sure on this, but I know that you stated you yourself are not a big proponent of taxes, only when absolutely necessary, and even then, at very small increments. So when was the last time something was passed to enable funding for our law enforcement?
Well, of course, the law enforcement's never had a dedicated tax. It's always come just out of the general revenue. And this is a general revenue tax, but it's being earmarked by the council as specifically for law enforcement. But cities, as a general rule, want to raise taxes. They run it by the citizens. They say no. They say, okay, we can wait. And then the next election comes around, they run it again. And then they run it until they can wear the citizens down. And finally they vote it in just so that they can have a change in the discussion, if nothing else. And there are cities, large cities, that's exactly their MO. That's how they do it. I'm not that way. I have never had a tax increase in any city that I've ever been associated with because I don't believe in raising taxes, ever. And I don't advocate for this tax or any other because I'm not allowed to.
Exactly.
So I'm not telling people to vote yes. I'm just here to give information.
Educate.
But I think it's important to understand that the city of Chillicothe has not asked for a tax increase in the rate at all for 17 years. 2003 was the last time the city asked for a rate of increase in taxation, and that was for a 1/4-cent sales tax specifically for the fire department.
Okay.
So the city of Chillicothe, long before I came, has had a history of good resource management, being fiscally responsible and conservative with the taxpayer dollars. And we take that very, very seriously to make sure that we are not in any way mishandling or misusing the taxpayer funds that we've been entrusted with. And that what we bring in from the taxpayer, we use for the benefit of the taxpayer.
Yes.
And so I just think it's an important concept to understand that this isn't something that we run up the flagpole every chance we get, hoping somebody will salute it.
Right.
This has been a long, drawn-out process trying to figure out the best way that we can fund this absolutely necessary faction of our services that we offer to the public. And that's where the council came out.
And I know the two departments that you named, both law enforcement and the emergency services, both of their department heads, I know from sitting in city council meetings and hearing it firsthand, do an amazing job of seeking out grants or additional funding that they can, as you said, feather in, to try to stretch the dollar that they are working with right now. So
absolutely the case. We don't waste anything. And I, as the one who writes the budget, along with the city auditor, Hannah Fletcher, who's doing a fantastic job herself, when we write these budgets, we write them so that there is a bit of reserve every year.
Yes.
We want to add to the reserves because you never know when, a virus.
A pandemic.
Will take hold of the nation and people become scared to go to the store or go to the movie theaters or whatever the case may be. Everybody needs to stay calm. I mean, we shouldn't be shaking hands.
Right. We're keeping our 3 feet of distance.
Hugging on each other, when they shouldn't be doing all that. Nobody should be licking doorknobs, right? But the same fact is that we don't have any cases here, so people should go out and participate and don't let the fear get you down. But when there is crisis, when there are times of real fear, that's when we rely on our emergency services the most.
Right.
And our firefighters, our EMTs, our ambulance drivers, paramedics, our police officers, they're here for the purpose of serving the people.
Yes.
And if we don't have the resources to make sure they have the tools necessary to do that, the ones who suffer are the people.
The citizens, yeah.
So 1/4 out of every $100 that a person spends to go toward this seems like a measured approach to a fiscal problem that requires a fiscal solution. And that's why this tax is going to be on the ballot.
Okay. So there you have it. You have all the information that you need. I'm sure if you need any additional information or insight on it, you can contact.
Yeah, you can reach me at 646-2424. Heather will answer the phone, but that's good because if Heather doesn't know about it, it doesn't exist. Okay, so she takes care of my calendar. And if you need to speak to me face to face, happy to do so.
So thank you again for tuning in. We hope that you found this information very insightful and informative, and that you will use this whenever you head to the polls on April 7th to vote in the local Livingston County and Chillicothe City election. Thank you again. On behalf of the Chillicothe Area Chamber of Commerce, I say thank you for taking time to watch our series today. For additional voter information, make sure and contact the Livingston County Courthouse at 646-8000. For additional information from the Chillicothe Area Chamber of Commerce, feel free to reach out to us on our website at chillicothemo.com, through phone at 646-4050, or email at chamber@chillicothemo.com. Thank you and have a great day.